Good morning, my friends. Hey, welcome to First Unitarian Church in New Bedford. I'm Reverend Karen LeBlanc. So glad to see you here and our friends online joining us this morning. We are people creating beloved community here at First Unitarian in New Bedford. We believe in practicing and promoting the Unitarian values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity in our congregation, and those values always spring from the love at the center that guides us all. We are people of purpose in this church, and we try to make sure that everyone feels welcome in this meeting house. And if what you hear today resonates with you, we hope you will consider joining us and becoming part of this way cool community of seekers and keepers of this very long dream that is our church. So if you are new, you can fill out one of these cards and put it in the offertory, and that will put you on our mailing list. First Unitarian in New Bedford recognizes that the land that we inhabit and enjoy sits on the unceded ancestral land of the Wampanoag. We give respect to the people of the First Light and their ancestors, and we honor them in this church. Couple quick housekeeping things. I told you about the blue card. You can join us for coffee hour after the service right down through that door in the parish hall. We are live streaming our service as we do every week, so please be aware of that if you get up to light a candle. If you will put your phones in worship mode, so we can make this a sacred and special time, I'd appreciate that. Now, before we even begin, if you could rise for me for just a moment. If you are able and willing, take a deep breath and get your hands up over your head. Bring them out as you exhale. Give me some cactus arms like this. If you can, if you can't, just do whatever feels right. Give yourself a little stretch. And one more, just because 3 is a magic number. And then bring your hands into your heart. Oh, give yourself some love. Give some love to the people around you. Let's start at that center of love. Okay, sit down. We're going to light our chalice. Yasmin, our RE teacher here, is going to teach us a very special chalice lighting this morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Yas.
So, this is Rise Up, O Flame. We have done this last year. I started with the children last Sunday. So you are more than welcome to rise to do it in your seat. We're going to do it 4 times. First, we'll do it with just action, and then we will do it all together, and then we'll do it with perfection, and then we'll do it with just signing.
Okay.
And no one will know if we mess up. That's the beauty of it. And so the goal is to say this as you light your chalice. If you light a chalice at home, or is it just that this one carries with you all the days that you do your stuff? So this is Rise Up, O Flame. It's 362. It's also printed here. So it goes like this. Rise up, like this is the flame. Rise up, O flame.
Flame, by thy light Nice. That was fun. Thanks, Yas.
By the whole flame, and then this is bilaterally glowing. So if you were doing it as exaggerated, it would just be by the whole flame, bilaterally glowing. This is show 2, beauty, because you are all beautiful, and your vision is like going forward, and joy. Like, thank you very much. So I hope you use that and share that. And thank you very much. I love that.
Thanks, Yasmin. Are you bringing the kids down now, or?
I believe we are leaving after the unison reading of the covenant.
Okie dokie. In that case, I am going to introduce our guest minister this morning, Reverend Gretchen Weis. She has been a UU minister for over 10 years, and she recently retired from the Murray UU Church in Attleboro, where she was named Minister Emerita. So let's welcome Reverend Gretchen.
Thank you, Reverend Karen. I want to thank you. I'm thrilled to be here this morning. And I wanted to say a personal thank you to the people of this congregation. Lean forward so I'm in the mic more. Okay. It's going to be, okay, so I have to move forward and lean forward. Okay. So about 5 years ago, Murray Church explored maybe doing a thrift shop. And New Bedford was one of the places we came to do our due diligence and our research. And your thrift shop team was just wonderful, helping to tour us through your shop and answered a million questions that we had. And so thanks to your encouragement, we did go forward and do a thrift shop of our own, and it's been a wonderful experience. So thank you for that. Thank you. All right. So, boy, this is going to be hard. I'm a tall person, and yeah, I know. I have to bend my knees and lean down in here. So this is going to be a little, what? Oh, no, does that work? Is that a little better? Okay, now I only have to bend my knees a little bit. I still have to bend over, though. Okay, so I invite you now all to pause and take a deep breath and center yourselves as together we co-create the sacred space of worship this morning. We come together to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and to see their communion, a reflection of our own eyes coming back to us. This house of laughter and silence, of memory and hope, is hallowed by our being together here. Now, come, let us worship together. Our first hymn this morning is number 6 in the gray hymnal, Just As Long As I Have Breath. I'm going to invite you to, do you normally rise as you are willing and able to join in singing? That would be wonderful. I invite you now to rise. Number 6.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I make my way, still with hope I I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Thank you.
No, not at all. Please take the time to say good morning and greet one another. Nothing. Now we are going to read our covenant together, which is printed in your order of service. We come together as a religious community, upholding freedom of conscience, right relationship, and the inherent worth of all people. We value our diversity and pledge to care for one another in the spirit of compassion, to speak and listen to each other with respect, and to promote justice and kindness in the world. Yes, me? May love be a guide in all I do. May kindness sing within my heart, and may peace be with us while we're apart.
And if you're interested in Sunday school, now's the time.
Any kids, any other kids want to go to Sunday school? Way cool. It's good to see you, Samara. I haven't seen you in a while. You're getting to be a very tall young lady. Oh my gosh, look at this little guy walking, running already. Now is the time in our service where we share with each other anything that's in our hearts, your joys, your concerns. I want to start by sending out some love to our administrator, Jessica's family. Her husband lost his dad on his birthday this past week, so it's been a very difficult time for them, and so we just want to send some love to Jess and Kyle and Alice and Archie. If anyone else would like to come up and light a candle, if you have something to share, please come and tell us your name and briefly tell us what you're lighting a candle for. Come on up, Deb.
Well, I want you all to know that our bees are doing well. We visited them all last week, and they're doing very well. And I know this isn't the time for stand-up comedy, but I'd like everyone who has ever washed dishes to raise their hand. You're all qualified to sign up for hospitality. There's a sign-up sheet. We have the next 2 Sundays covered, so you're all set. But there's a sign-up sheet on the table. Please help us out.
Thank you. Way to set him up, Deb, too. That was good.
I know what Deb said about washing dishes. Actually, it was kind of funny because recently my skin, for whatever reason, has been doing all kinds of things I don't need to say up here when I wash dishes specifically. And long story short, I've been to the doctor, and the doctor even said, like, yeah, you're medically prescribed not to do the dishes.
You want a note?
Yeah. So I've been like using all of these like, ointments or whatever stuff to make my skin better. But it's kind of funny because it's just like, I love cooking, but the thing is I can't cook because I can't do the dishes. So I've been, Izzy and I have eating nothing but like, we've been eating nothing but calzones, just heat up calzones the entire week.
Okay, I lit 2 final candles, as is our practice in this church. One for all the joys and concerns we keep in our hearts, and one for everyone out there that has not found a safe and supportive place to share with, like this one. Now, if you will join me for our responsive reading this morning, it's number 440, 440 in your gray hymnal. And I will read the plain type if you will answer with the italicized type. From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we gather together in search of wholeness. Yet we know that no branch is utterly severed from the tree of life that sustains us all. We would hold fast to all of good we inherit, even as we would leave behind us the outworn and the false. Let us labor in hope for the dawning of a new day without hatred, violence, and injustice. In this spirit we gather, in this spirit we pray. Amen, my brothers and sisters. And I will hand it over to you, my sister.
And have patience with us as we experiment with the different heights of two different ministers here. So I invite you now into a time of meditation and centering and prayer, followed by a time of shared silence together. Spirit of love and spirit of life, God, sacred experiences known by many names and by none. There is much suffering in the world. The war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza. This week, exploding pagers throughout Lebanon and the Middle East targeting Hezbollah, another enemy of Israel. And in the wee hours last night, Hezbollah has responded, sending missile and drone strikes across the border into southern Israel. There was also another mass shooting last night, this time in Birmingham, Alabama, where different gunmen fired into a large crowd in a nightclub area of town, killing 4 and wounding 18 others. We gather this morning to imagine an end to the escalation of war, to imagine an end to gun violence. We gather to pray for peace. Peace within our hearts, peace within our families. Pray for a ceasefire, whether there is war raging or a wounded young person who feels they need to grab a gun and get even. We must believe that a ceasefire of any kind or that peace is possible. So let us join our hearts with so many others around the world to pray for an end to gun violence and armed conflicts going on all over the world. As we enter into a moment of silence, giving this our attention and our intention, let us center and meditate on building a lasting peace wherever it is needed. Let us enter into a time of shared silence together now. Thank you, Randy. It is good to be reminded that we have more in common than we do what divides us. Our reading this morning is adapted from a reflection by Buddhist philosopher and poet Mark Nepo, who writes, "If peace comes from seeing the whole of life, then misery stems from a loss of perspective. We begin so aware and grateful. The sun somehow rises in the morning and hangs there in the sky. We hear a little bird sing, and the miracle of life just happens all around us. And then we stub our toe, and in that moment of pain, the world is reduced to what's going on with that little toe. And now for a day or two, it's difficult to walk, and with every step, we are reminded about our poor little toe. But what defines our day? The pinch we feel when we walk on our bruised toe, or the ongoing miracle of life still happening everywhere around us? When we give ourselves over to smallness, we invite in misery. In truth, we should take nothing for granted, feeling gratitude that we have enough to eat or that we are well enough to eat. But somehow, through the living of our days, our focus narrows like a camera with that shutter down, and we crop out the horizon, and one day we will find ourselves miffed at the restaurant because our eggs are more runny than we like them, or the hash browns aren't seasoned the way we like. When we narrow our focus, the problem becomes everything. And we forget the first time we ever beheld the beauty and excitement of a new person, a new partner. We forget the comfort when we first felt seen or heard or held by them. And when we narrow our view, instead we're up half the night, annoyed by the way our lover has pulled the covers or leaves the dishes in the kitchen sink without washing them. I know, I just had to let that soak in. Our misery is nothing more than a moment of annoyance, sorrow, or suffering that was allowed to become everything. So when feeling miserable, we must remember to look wider than what hurts. When feeling that splinter, we must, while we try to remove it, remember that there is an entire human body that is not the splinter, a spirit that is not the splinter, a world that is not the splinter. Our next hymn is also from the gray hymnal, number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Please rise as you are willing and able, number 34.
Speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire and have not love. My words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Through I may give all I possess, and the striving soul my love profess, but not begin. the prophets soon turn strangely thin. Come, spirits, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to maim it whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are freed.
Now is the time in our service where we ask you for your very kind donations toward the many good works of this church, and we thank you.
So the news, as usual, is brutal. There was the attack by Hamas on October 7th last year that killed more than 1,200 Israelis. Hostages taken. Is that better? All right. The nearly year-long war in Gaza and more than 40,000 civilians killed. The humanitarian crisis, people starving, many of them children. Today's technology delivers photos and videos of violence, chaos, death, hate, destruction in real time from anywhere in the world. They deliver images that can sear our souls and break our hearts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For instance, just this month, there's the 14-year-old who started out a new school year by bringing a gun to school and killing 2 students and 2 teachers in Georgia and wounding 9 more. And let's not forget the raging wildfires all throughout the West or the ongoing nastiness of yet another election season. Let's face it, news stories tend to focus on what's wrong, what's broken. They tend to focus on violent, they are hate-filled, it's disturbing. And is anybody else beginning to feel a little overwhelmed by this? Yeah. Yep. So we're not imagining things. Researchers claim that today's news has become more negative and emotionally gut-wrenching than ever before. Now, I'm old enough to remember that you had a morning newspaper and an evening newspaper, and you had morning news on TV and 6 p.m. and either 10 or 11 p.m., and that was it until the next day. Anybody else old enough to kind of remember that? Yeah. Now, the news cycle is literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we are bombarded nonstop with stories of violence, hate, death, crime, and ongoing natural disasters. But all this negative news coverage distorts what's really happening. Look at crime, one journalist points out. All forms of violent crime have been steadily declining in this country for decades. Yet the news coverage of murders and other violent events has increased more than 500% over the past 25 years. The news coverage leads you to believe as if crime is increasing, but it is not. It's distorting the truth. One news editor reminds us that negative news stories show us just one extraordinary fragment, just one slice of the real world. And of course, rarely does that slice relate to most of us sitting here in this room any more than a crime thriller would relate to our lives. But here's one part of the problem. Research shows that human beings are hardwired to pay more attention to negative information. As ancient hunters and gatherers, our ancestors learned to keep an eye out for anything unusual that might indicate possible danger and threaten survival. So we can't help ourselves. Our biology pays more attention when the news is bad. And yes, today's news coverage has become more grisly and gruesome because cell phones all around the world capture the trauma as it happens. And violent images are immediately posted on social media. And this has forced traditional media to rebroadcast or print upsetting scenes that wouldn't have been shown on television or printed in newspapers in the recent past. Now, how is all this bad news impacting us? Researcher Mary McNaughton-Cassell researches the connection between media consumption and stress. And can a daily diet of negative news cause post-traumatic stress syndrome or PTSD or anxiety or depression? No, she says, but it can certainly trigger those who are already predisposed towards those conditions. Now, some members of the media are completely disgusted and they're fighting back. Arianna Huffington, founder of the Huffington Post, speaks out against the old newsroom commandment, if it bleeds, it leads. In the old days, that meant if a story of bloodshed or tragedy or corruption, if something bleeds, it's going to get above the fold, the top part of the newspaper. It leads. But she says that's nothing more than lousy journalism. Our job, she says, is to give the audience an accurate picture, and that means the full story of what's going on in the world. Because when we only focus on what's broken, we miss the stories of how people are coming together in the midst of violence, poverty, tragedy, and loss. Now, let me be clear, she continues, I'm not talking about those aw shucks, adorable animal stories. We need consistent journalism storytelling about people and communities doing amazing things, overcoming great odds, and coming up with solutions to the very real challenges we face. Huffington believes that people want more constructive and optimistic and inspiring stories. She notes that people forward and share significantly more positive stories on social media from the HuffPost than the negative ones. And academic researchers reviewed the New York Times stories that were shared and posted on social media in a 6-month period, and they confirmed the same thing. People were far more likely to post and pass along stories that spurred positive feelings. Sean Dagan-Wood, who's the editor of Positive News, believes it's not enough just to expose what's going wrong in the world. We also need to expose what's going right in the world. Now, the Huffington Post has created a What's Working initiative, and they include the Good Life section on their website. The Washington Post has actually created the Optimist newsletter, and NBC Nightly News, for example, ends each evening broadcast with a positive, upbeat good news story. And on the weekends, they actually do a wrap-up of good news stories from around the country throughout the past week. So it's nice to be reminded that positive human interactions and caring are also going on out there. Yet these few positive stories are just like drops in the ocean of bad news. So how can we take heart in the midst of so many heartbreaking headlines? First and foremost, we need to remind ourselves that the media is going to present far more sensational, traumatic stories than news about human kindness. Bad news sells. And there is no question that in some pockets of our world, especially in the Middle East and Africa, in Ukraine, folks are experiencing tremendous upset and violence and suffering. And it is truly horrible. And many of these areas involve harm with children. And what we are seeing is just a dramatic slice. When we see that wounded child being rushed to medical help in Gaza, it's tough to remember that hundreds of millions of other children had a good day, a safe and a happy day. We need to remind ourselves that there is just as much, if not more, good news stories happening in this world all around us. Stories of generosity and loving kindness that may not get told, but are still a huge, thriving part of the human experience every day, all around the world. As our reading this morning reminds us, perspective matters. When we narrow our focus down to seeing only misery in front of us, the misery becomes everything. We need to remember to take a deep breath, to back up, and embrace the whole of life. Seek the complete human story. So what else might help? Well, we can take a break from all this negativity. Rolf Dobelli, the author of The Art of Thinking Clearly, compares today's negative news to junk food. And just like binge eating junk food isn't good for our health, neither is binge watching or binge reading or binge digital devicing all this news. Now, the media wants us to believe that the news offers us some sort of competitive advantage, but Dobelli reminds us that most of the daily stories, you don't need them. They're not necessarily news you need or can use. Okay, if the big storm's blowing in, turn on the weather. But most of today's news stories are not something you need to make a decision about. He said, we see more than 10,000 news stories a year, and he challenges us to recall if any one of these 10,000 stories actually helped you make a better decision about a serious matter in your life. Now, Dobelli believes the answer is probably not. And that's why 4 years ago, he decided to stop watching or reading the daily news. Instead, he turns to long, in-depth journal articles and books to understand more about the most important trends that are shaping the world today. And just because he has disconnected from the news, he does not feel disconnected from the world. Rather, Dobelli reports that he has gained less disruption in his life, he experiences less anxiety, and finds he has more time for concentration, deeper thinking, and reflection. So let's move beyond the news for a moment to talk a little bit about social media. In this age of artificial intelligence, it's really hard to tell if the information you are hearing or what you're seeing in a photo or a video are real or fake. Russia, Iran, and China have been accused of spreading all kinds of misinformation in an effort to influence our election. And misinformation and conspiracy theories sure seem to travel like the speed of light, especially on social media. There are no guardrails to determine what is true and what is fake. So that rumor about Haitian immigrants eating people's pets in Springfield, Ohio, that began as a post on Facebook. The woman has since taken it down and apologized. But the story has certainly been debunked. There's nothing about that is true. And yet it continues on and on. Candidates from one political party are still spreading this fake story to help stoke fear and mistrust and hate against immigrants. So let's get back to self-care. And while we're talking about maybe taking a break from the daily news, we may want to consider taking a break from social media as well. Or at least consider ourselves going on a diet, only limiting our intake to maybe once a day. Now, this seems heretical to suggest in an election year, yet one recent study analyzed the coverage of our current campaign season to find that there has been little or no news coverage about the actual issues facing our nation. Instead, it should come as no surprise that the majority of the daily political reporting has centered on the personalities and the controversies surrounding the candidates themselves and some of the more outrageous things they are saying. So, what would you truly miss if you tuned out the mudslinging and focused on reading a more in-depth, thought-provoking magazine or online article instead? Maybe, just maybe, you might find the time to tune into some of the more positive things happening in your life. Now, what else might you do to help take good care of yourselves when you find yourself overwhelmed by what is happening in the world? Now, at times like these, I need to double down on my spiritual practice. I begin each morning with a daily Buddhist reading, and I journal about it. And then there's my gratitude practice before I turn out the light to go to sleep at night, I think of 3 things I am grateful for that happened that day. And I have a little notebook to jot down what those 3 things were. It's amazing how taking time to focus on gratitude helps to change the way we see the world. We learn to pay more attention to see the grace and goodness in our everyday lives. My gratitude practice helps me feel more grounded in the kindness I have learned to see all around me. So I invite you to explore ways to ground yourself in the goodness of the world, especially as we enter into the final sprint of this rather nasty election season. So consider turning off the news, walk away from social media, and give yourself a break from misinformation. And if you already have a daily spiritual practice, consider adding another one. Maybe a gratitude practice, maybe meditation. Or get out and volunteer. Be part of the larger human story of kindness and helping others. Get out there and do good things, serving needs greater than your own. Now, if you don't have a daily spiritual practice or you're looking for a volunteer activity to help others, check in with Reverend Karen. She will be full of suggestions for you. Remember, the news and social media are just one slice, a negative slice of what happens every day. I invite you to pay more attention to the good news happening around you and remind yourself that millions, if not billions, of people showed up for one another with kindness somewhere today, all around the world. I invite you to keep things in perspective and to take good care of your spirit, because your health and your happiness may just be dependent on it. And that's a good news story. Amen, and may it be so. Our closing hymn this morning is number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere, number 95. I invite you to rise as you are willing and able and join in singing.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I find it, there is more joy somewhere.
I love that hymn, but I wish they'd change the last stanza to remind us that there's more love and joy and hope right here. It is why we come to be part of beloved community. I close this morning with these thoughts adapted from the book of Luke. Can you add a single hour to your span of life by worrying? You know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? To that, I add my own thoughts. Keep perspective. Remember that there is also goodness and kindness in this world every day. And remember to take good care of yourselves and one another. Amen.
Thanks, Randy. Quick reminder, next week is our Climate Justice Revival. So Saturday we will be here for a 4-hour session, 11 to 3, I believe it is. And then next Sunday, we will have our Climate Justice Revival service here. It'll be special. Please go to uunewbedford.org and register for the workshop on Saturday, if you would be so kind. And if you're interested, are you interested in climate justice, people? Yes, okay, come on, sign up. All right, hold fast, my dears. We love you. Stay strong. Live long and prosper. Go in peace. Come on, have some coffee.